The people who love you most gave you the wrong map. Your parents sat you down at the kitchen table. Your teachers stood at the front of a classroom. Your friends talked in the lunchroom. And they all said the same thing. Study hard, get a good job, work for a good company, save a little every month. And one day, you will be comfortable. They were not lying to you. They were giving you the only map they had. But comfortable is not the same as free, and a salary is not the same as wealth. By the people who love you most, you were handed a beautiful map. It just leads to the wrong destination. There are two sets of rules in this world. Emphasis. Two, not one. The first set is the set everybody teaches. Work hard, earn a paycheck, live within your means, hope things go well. The second set is the one that a very small group of people quietly practice. They do not talk about it at dinner parties. They do not post it on billboards. You will not find it in a school curriculum, but you will find evidence of it everywhere. In the quiet fortunes of people whose names you never read in a newspaper, in the family businesses that survived 3 generations, in the janitor who died and left behind $1.2 million. The first set of rules produces workers. The second set produces owners. I'm going to teach you the second set today. Now, why 6 skills? Not 7. Not 10, exactly 6. Emphasis. Because after decades of studying what Jim Rohn called the philosophy of the successful, and after watching ordinary people in back offices in Birmingham and corner stores in Houston and rented apartments in Manila build real, lasting wealth, the number is not arbitrary. 6 is the number of load-bearing pillars. You remove one, the whole structure is fragile. You try to add 7 or 8, you start adding decoration, not structure. 6 skills. That is it. Master these 6 and your income becomes almost irrelevant to your outcome. Ignore even one, and all the salary in the world will not save you. I need to warn you about something before we go further. Emphasis. Some of what you are about to hear will contradict what you were told. Not by bad people, by good people, by the people who loved you and meant well. But meaning well is not the same as being right. If you are the kind of person who cannot handle being wrong, if you need what you already believe to be confirmed, this video is not for you. Leave now. No hard feelings. But if you are willing to sit with the discomfort of a new idea, stay. Because what I am about to give you is not inspiration, it is instruction. Before we begin, I want you to picture something. In the back offices of small family businesses in Tulsa, in the storage rooms of convenience stores in Toronto, in the modest living rooms of retirees in Cape Town, there are people sitting with spreadsheets who never earned more than $40,000 a year, but somehow retired with more money than their highest paid neighbors. This is not luck. This is not a secret club. This is not luck at birth. It is a set of practice skills. 6 of them. And today, I give them all to you. The first skill is called the spread. When I was 23 years old, I got my first real paycheck. I remember holding that paper in my hand and thinking I had arrived. I spent it in 11 days. Not on anything dramatic, just on the things that felt normal. A nicer pair of shoes, a dinner out, a jacket I did not need. 11 days. And then I looked at my account and felt a kind of quiet shame I still remember. That shame taught me something nothing else could. Let me tell you about a person. His name for this story is David. He worked as a custodian at an elementary school in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. He earned $28,000 a year for 31 years. His coworkers liked him. His supervisor trusted him. He brought lunch from home every single day. He drove the same car for 17 years. When David died at age 74, his family discovered, to their complete shock, that he had saved and invested his way to $1.1 million. They called it impossible. It was not impossible. It was the spread. Here is the math, because the math is the only honest teacher in this room. The spread is the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That is it. Not how much you earn. The gap. A person earning $200,000 a year with a $190,000 lifestyle has a $10,000 spread. A person earning $30,000 a year with a $20,000 lifestyle has a $10,000 spread. Same spread. Different salaries. Over 30 years, invested at a modest 7% annual return, that $10,000 annual spread becomes $1,022,000. Notice that. The salary did not build the wealth. The gap did. Jim Rohn said it plainly. It's not how much money you make, but how much money you keep. Keep more than you spend. That is skill 1. The spread is the engine. Everything else is fuel. The second skill is called the soldier test. I remember sitting in a coffee shop in my late 20s, watching a man at the table next to me take a phone call. He was dressed expensively. He was speaking loudly about his portfolio, his investments, his properties. And when the call ended, he pulled out a card to pay for his coffee, and it was declined. He tried a second card. It was declined. He paid with coins from his pocket. I did not laugh. I felt something sadder than that. He looked wealthy. He was performing wealth. He had not tested himself. Let me tell you about a person. Her name, for this story, is Miriam. She came to Canada from the Philippines with $60 and a suitcase. She did not speak fluent English. She stocked shelves at a grocery store in Mississauga for 6 years. She was quiet. She watched. She learned. Not just how to stack cans, she learned how the store worked, who ordered, who sold, what moved, and what sat. 15 years later, she owned 4 small convenience stores. By age 48, she had bought a 5th. She once told her daughter, "The shelf taught me everything." That is the soldier test in action, not what you look like when times are easy, what you learn when you are doing the hard, invisible work. Here is the math. A person who resists lifestyle inflation for their first decade of earning and redirects those funds into compounding assets will have roughly 3 times the net worth of a peer who inflated their lifestyle at the same rate as their salary. Let me be specific. 2 people, both earn $40,000 at 25. Person A increases spending every time their income rises. Person B keeps spending flat for 10 years. At 35, person B has approximately $140,000 in invested assets. Person A has approximately $12,000. Same salary, different discipline. Jim Rohn was blunt about this. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. The soldier test asks one question: can you resist looking rich long enough to become rich? Wealth is quiet. Poverty is loud. The tree that survives the storm is the one that grew deep roots before the storm came. If you are still with me at this point in the video, I want to acknowledge something. You just heard something that went directly against what popular culture tells you. You are told to enjoy your money. You are told life is short. Both things are true. And neither of them means you should consume every dollar you earn. What you just learned is that patience, compounded, is a financial weapon. Here's the consequence. Every year you delay building the spread, you are not just losing that year's investment, you are losing the compound growth on that year's investment for every year after it. The cost of delay is invisible until it is enormous. The third skill is called the compounding decade. I did not understand compound interest until I was 31. And when I finally understood it, really understood it, I felt something between amazement and grief. Amazement because of how powerful it is. Grief because of how many years I had wasted not using it. I wish someone had sat me down at 20 and drawn this on a napkin. Let me tell you about a person. His name, for this story, is Harold. He was a draftsman in a small engineering firm in Leeds, England. He wore the same kind of cardigan every day. He packed his own sandwiches. He retired at 52. His co-workers asked him how. He said he started early and he stayed consistent. That was his entire answer. They thought he was being modest. He was not. He was describing a mathematical truth that most people never act on. Here is the math. If you invest $5,000 per year starting at age 25 and you earn an average of 8% per year, by age 65 you will have approximately $1,398,000. If you wait until 35 to start the exact same contribution, you will have approximately $611,000. Same annual contribution, same rate of return. 10 years of delay cost you nearly $800,000. Not because you invested less money, you only invested $50,000 less. Time turned $50,000 into $800,000 of difference. Notice that. Jim Rohn spent his life teaching this. He called time the great equalizer, the one resource available to the broke young person that the wealthy old person cannot buy back. The compounding decade is not a metaphor. It is a mathematical cliff. Once you are past the edge of your early years, the cost of starting later is permanent and geometric. The river carves the canyon slowly. The carving starts on the first day. Start now. The fourth skill is called the skill stack. I want to be honest with you about something. For years, I thought wealth came from working harder. I put in longer hours. I stayed later. I said yes to everything. And I earned more. But my income grew slowly, linearly, because effort scales linearly. 1 more hour, 1 more unit of output. But skills stack. 2 skills together are not worth 2 times 1 skill. They are worth 10 times. That is not a metaphor. That is the structure of the modern labor market. Let me tell you about a person. His name is Marcus. He was a barber in Memphis, Tennessee. He cut hair for 22 years. He was very good at it. But he also, quietly, over years, became deeply skilled in business accounting. Not because he went to school for it, because he studied it on his own in the evenings, because he was curious. And one day, Marcus stopped being a barber who was good at cutting hair. He became a barber who could run a profitable multi-location grooming business because he understood both the craft and the numbers. By the time he retired at 57, he had sold that business for an amount that made his family ask if there had been some mistake. There was no mistake. He had stacked. Here's the math. A person with one marketable skill earns at the average rate for that skill. A person who combines two complementary skills, say communication and data analysis, earns at a premium that research suggests is 50 to 200% above either skill alone. This is because the combination is rare, not the individual components. If you can write and you understand finance, you are rarer than a writer and rarer than a finance person. Jim Rohn put it this way: income seldom exceeds personal development. The more you become, the more you are worth to the market. You do not raise your income by working harder in the same lane. You raise it by becoming someone the market cannot easily replace. The skill stack is not about collecting certificates. It is about building a combination that the market prices highly because the market cannot find it on any shelf. Bees that cross-pollinate between flowers produce more honey than bees that stay in one field. Cross your disciplines, deliberately, on purpose, starting now. At the midpoint of this script, I want to acknowledge something. You have heard 4 skills so far: the spread, the soldier test, the compounding decade, the skill stack, and every single one of them has one thing in common: not money. Emphasis. Every single one of them is a practiced behavior, not an inherited circumstance. You do not need to be born into money to build a spread. You do not need a trust fund to resist lifestyle inflation. You do not need wealthy parents to begin compounding at 25. You need a decision, and then another decision, and then 30 years of those decisions made consistently. This is what Jim Rohn meant when he said, "You cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight." The direction is in your hands. It always was. If you are still with me at this point in the video, here is the consequence you just learned that I need you to feel, not just understand. You now know that every skill you add compounds your earning potential in a non-linear way. That means inaction is not neutral. Inaction right now costs you geometric future value. Every week you spend consuming instead of developing, you are not standing still. You are falling behind at a rate you cannot see yet but will eventually feel. The 5th skill is called the lifestyle freeze. I remember the first time I earned a significant raise. My reaction was immediate and instinctive. I started thinking about a better apartment, a newer car, a vacation I'd been putting off, and I caught myself. Something in me stopped and asked, does any of that make me more valuable? Does any of that build the gap? The answer was no. And so I froze my lifestyle. I kept my apartment. I kept my car. And I redirected the difference. That decision, made once, created a financial distance between me and my previous self that I have never closed. The lifestyle freeze is not about deprivation. It is about timing. You freeze first. You thaw later from a position of ownership, not obligation. Let me tell you about a person. Her name, for this story, is Elena. She was a bookkeeper in a mid-sized accounting firm in Sao Paulo, Brazil. She received a salary increase of $8,000 per year when she was 32. Her colleagues celebrated with her. Most of them moved into nicer apartments within 6 months of their own raises. Elena froze. She kept her apartment. She kept her used car. And she redirected her raise into a simple index fund. Not stocks she picked. Not a guru's newsletter. A basic, low-cost fund. For 11 years, she froze. At 43, she was financially free in a way none of her colleagues could understand, because none of them could see the decade of invisible discipline that preceded it. Here is the math. If you receive a $3,000 annual raise at age 30 and you consume it as it arrives, you gain $3,000 of lifestyle. If you invest it instead at a 7% annual return, over 20 years it becomes approximately $116,000. Every raise you consume is not a reward. It is a cost. Every raise you invest is not a sacrifice. It is a purchase. You are purchasing freedom. Jim Rohn was direct about this. He said, live below your means, not within your means. Below. The dam holds the water not because it pushes it away, but because it holds it long enough for it to become power. The lifestyle freeze is your dam. Hold it until the water has enough pressure to power the rest of your life. The sixth and final skill is called the quiet network. For many years, I believed that talent was the primary driver of financial success. That if you were good enough, people would find you. I was wrong. I watched less talented people, genuinely less skilled people, outperform me financially year after year. And I studied why. The answer was not corruption. It was not luck. It was relationships. Not the loud kind. Not the LinkedIn announcement kind. The quiet kind. The kind built over years of showing up, of following through, of being someone that other people trusted without needing to inspect your credentials. Let me tell you about a person. His name for this story is Thomas. He was a mechanic in a small town outside of Detroit. He fixed cars for 30 years. He was not the most technically gifted mechanic in the region, but he was the most consistent. He remembered names. He followed up when he said he would. He told the truth about what a car needed and what it did not. Over 3 decades, his reputation spread not through advertising, but through referral. By the time he retired at 59, his shop had a 2-week waiting list, and he sold it for more than $1 million to a buyer who was willing to pay that price specifically because of the reputation Thomas had built, one honest conversation at a time. That is the quiet network in action. Here's the math. Research in labor economics consistently shows that approximately 70 to 80% of jobs and business opportunities are never publicly advertised. They move through personal networks. If your network is shallow, you compete for the 20% that is public. If your network is deep, you access the 80% that is invisible. The financial difference between competing in the 20% versus the 80% over a career is not marginal. It is the difference between the salary you are offered and the opportunity you are invited into before it exists. Jim Rohn said this with his characteristic directness. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. He did not mean this as a social observation. He meant it as a financial forecast. The quiet network is not about using people. It is about being worth knowing. Become the person that other people trust. The seeds planted in the soil of honest relationships grow into the forest that shelters your whole financial future. 6 skills. The spread, the soldier test, the compounding decade, the skill stack, the lifestyle freeze, the quiet network. Now I need to tell you something important, and I need you to hear this clearly. What you just learned is conceptually simple enough to fit on a single page. I could write those 6 names on an index card and hand it to you, and you would be holding the core of everything I just taught. And yet, FASCISs, fewer than 1 person in 50 will execute all 6. Not because they are ignorant, you are not ignorant, you just watched this whole video. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, because execution requires something that knowledge does not supply on its own. It requires the kind of daily discipline that feels invisible, unrewarded, and sometimes almost pointless. Right up until the decade turns and the compound curve reveals what the years have been quietly building. Jim Rohn said it better than I ever could. He said, "What is easy to do is also easy not to do." That is the great paradox of this entire body of work. The spread is easy to understand. It is not easy to practice when the new phone comes out. The compounding decade is mathematically obvious. It is not obvious when you are 22 and retirement feels like science fiction. The quiet network is simple in principle. It is hard to sustain when you are tired and isolated and it seems like no one is paying attention. This is conceptually simple and behaviorally demanding. Those 2 things exist together in perfect tension. And that tension is exactly why so few people build real wealth. Not because the path is hidden, because the path is long and the rewards are delayed and the culture around you is shouting the opposite direction at full volume every day. This is where Jim Rohn placed his greatest emphasis. Not on information, but on philosophy. Not on what to do, but on why to continue doing it when nothing seems to be happening. He said, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. You cannot make compounding faster. You cannot make the decade shorter. You cannot skip the soldier test. You can only become someone who practices these skills regardless of whether the result is visible yet. The hardest part of building wealth is the decade when you cannot yet see the result of your discipline. The decade when your peers are buying things you are not buying. The decade when the compound curve is still in its flat early phase and it looks like nothing is happening. Everything is happening. You just cannot see it yet. The bamboo plant spends 5 years growing its root system underground before it grows a single visible inch above the soil. And then it grows 90 feet in 6 weeks. You are not failing during those 5 years. You are building the infrastructure that the rapid growth will require. The people who built the fortunes I described in this video, David the custodian, Miriam the shelf stalker, Harold the draftsman, Marcus the barber, Elena the bookkeeper, Thomas the mechanic, none of them had extraordinary incomes. None of them had secret connections. None of them received an inheritance that changed the math. They had ordinary salaries and extraordinary consistency. They practiced these 6 skills without drama, without applause, and without an audience. And they arrived at the end of their working lives at a place their peers could not explain. That is the great paradox. The path is visible. The destination is provable. The mathematics are public. And still, almost no one walks the whole path. The few who do are not smarter. They are not luckier. They are more philosophically committed to results that will not arrive for years. Jim Rohn spent his life asking one question, not how do I get more, but how do I become more? Because when you become more, when your skills expand, when your discipline deepens, when your philosophy clarifies, the getting takes care of itself. Income rises to meet the person you become. That is not a motivational phrase. It is an observation backed by every archetype I described in this video. Now, here's what I need you to do before you sleep tonight. Get a piece of paper, not your phone. Paper. Get a pen. Write today's date at the top. Draw a line under it. And below that line, write 3 things. 3 concrete commitments. Not goals, not wishes, commitments. The first, write down what your current spread is. Your income minus your spending. Write the number. If you do not know the number, that is your first commitment to find out within 48 hours. The second, write down 1 skill you will deliberately begin developing in the next 30 days. 1, not 5. 1 complementary skill that will make your existing abilities rarer and more valuable to the market. The third, write down 1 relationship you will invest in this month. 1 person in your existing network or 1 person you should meet that is connected to the direction you want to go. 1 honest conversation, offered without agenda, within 30 days. Sign the paper, put your name on it. Then stand in front of a mirror and read those 3 lines out loud to yourself. Not because the universe is listening, because you are listening. Because the person in the mirror is the only person who can enforce the contract and the only person who benefits from keeping it. This is your 30-day contract. 30 days. 3 commitments. Paper, pen, mirror. Today. I want to lead you with something Jim Rohn said that I have carried for years. He said, "The few who do are not different in kind from the many who don't. They are different in decision." Here is the honest truth about this moment. 98 of you will agree with everything I said today. You will feel it, you will share it, you will mean to act on it. 2 of you will change. Not because you are different in intelligence, not because you are different in opportunity, because you will do the one thing the 98 will not do. You will pick up the paper and the pen tonight and you will begin. I do not know yet which one you are. Neither do you. But in 30 days, you will. The room you are sitting in right now contains everything you need to begin. Not a better salary, not a different city, not a different starting point. The spread begins tonight. The compounding decade begins tonight. The quiet network begins with the next honest conversation you have. Every skill I described is available to you at this exact moment, at this exact income, with this exact background. Jim Rohn built his philosophy on one central idea, that the quality of your life is the quality of your decisions, accumulated over time. Not the quality of your circumstances, not the quality of your luck, your decisions, compounded over time. 6 skills, 1 decision, tonight. In our next video, I want to take you deeper into the quiet network, because the mechanics of how ordinary people build extraordinary access are more specific and more actionable than most people realize. The relationships that changed David's estate, that opened Miriam's 4th store, that made Thomas's shop worth buying, those were not accidents. They were built with a method. I will show you that method in the next video. I will see you there.